AWS Lambda Overview. AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service. You can configure a trigger and AWS Lambda runs your code automatically in response to your trigger. AWS Lambda manages all the underlying compute resources for you. All you need to do is supply the underlying code. AWS Lambda takes care of everything required to run and scale your code with high availability. This is how it works. First, simply upload your code to AWS Lambda, or write code in the Lambda code editor. The code you run on AWS Lambda is called a Lambda function. Next, you can set up your code to trigger from other AWS services, HTTP endpoints, in-app activity, or run on a schedule. Then AWS Lambda is ready to run your code, when triggered, using only the compute resources needed. You just pay for the compute time you use. You can invoke Lambda functions directly, or configure triggers to invoke Lambda functions in response to incoming HTTP requests or AWS services. You can also configure Lambda to read from a queue or a stream and invoke a function, or run on a schedule using Amazon Event Bridge triggers. Here are some examples. Amazon Simple Storage Service, S3. When there is a change in an Amazon S3 bucket's content, such as when an object file is created, deleted or updated, the Lambda function is invoked. Amazon Simple Notification Service, SNS. When a message is published to an SNS topic that the Lambda function is subscribed to, the Lambda function is invoked. Amazon API Gateway. You can create an API using Amazon API Gateway. When the API is called, the API Gateway invokes the Lambda function. Amazon DynamoDB. When a DynamoDB record is created or modified, the Lambda function can be configured to trigger and run the code. Amazon Simple Queue Service, SQS. You can use an AWS Lambda function to process messages in an Amazon SQS queue. Lambda polls the queue and invokes your function synchronously. What are the benefits of AWS Lambda? You do not need to provision or manage any servers. All you need is to write the code, upload it to Lambda, and then AWS Lambda automatically runs your code for you. Another benefit is continuous scaling in response to each trigger. AWS Lambda automatically scales your application. Your code runs in parallel, then processes each trigger individually, scaling precisely with the size of the workload. Sub-second metering. With AWS Lambda, you pay only for what you use. Pricing is based on the number of times your code is triggered. That is the number of requests and the duration it takes to run your code. Billing is metered in increments of 1 millisecond, rounded up to the next millisecond. When your code isn't running, you do not pay anything. AWS Lambda makes it easy to build cost-effective, serverless applications that respond quickly to your customers' needs.